The first time her gaze fell upon him, something inside her chest seized. He exuded an unmasked roughness, a restrained tension, and an elusive danger. Every step he took towards her seemed to scorch the space between them. She knew it shouldn't be like this, but the events that followed felt inevitable and overwhelming. On that memorable morning in Guanajuato, it wasn't just the coffee that was cooling, her own life had been stagnating since Diego left her. The morning in the house stretched endlessly. Timid sunbeams barely pierced through the window, faintly illuminating the remnants of her old routine, which she could barely tolerate. Everything around her was submerged in a suffocating silence, palpable in every corner of this once large, now empty house. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of breaking glass, a dry, sharp crash that made her heart pound. For a moment, a wave of adrenaline washed over her. With trembling hands, she rushed into the room, hoping to see an intruder or something that would explain the noise. But what she saw surpassed all her expectations. Behind the curtains, gently swaying in the wind, she noticed some movement in the garden. There, amidst scattered trash bags and the remnants of a night she would rather forget, sat a dog. Thin, dirty, with eyes that seemed to tell a story of abandonment. It was rummaging through the bags, trying to find anything to sate its hunger. This scene presented a stark contrast between the animal's fragility and its desperate struggle for the most basic necessity, at least a scrap of food. For a moment, she froze, paralyzed. Inside her, irritation at the invasion of her small world mingled with pity for a creature simply trying to survive. Her voice was sharper than she intended when she yelled, "Get out of here!" The dog flinched, its ears perked up. It froze in place, looking at her. There was more than just fear or defiance in that gaze, there was a silent plea. The animal's expression was disarming. It didn't look aggressive, rather, it seemed like a creature trying to survive, unsure what to expect from this world. She tried to yell again, but her voice wasn't as firm this time. "Go." The dog whimpered softly, as if trying to justify its presence. Something in that sound, fragile and full of intent, touched the deepest corners of her soul. Her gaze slid to the animal's paws, covered in dirt and scars. She noticed a small, fresh cut on its left paw. "What are you doing here?" she mumbled, almost unaware of it. Her voice was much softer now. To her surprise, the dog tilted its head slightly, as if trying to understand her words. It took a step back but didn't run away. Instead, it remained standing, observing her with restrained curiosity. She leaned against the doorframe, feeling the cold metal on her skin. In that moment, the house didn't feel as empty, and that worried her as much as it comforted her. "Why don't you just leave?" she asked, more to herself. After a long pause, she took a deep breath and went inside. Her thoughts were in complete disarray. She opened a closet and pulled out an old towel, deciding she needed to deal with this situation once and for all. With slow steps, she returned to the garden, holding the towel like a shield. The dog remained in place, watching her every move intently. She crouched down, carefully unfolding the towel. "I won't hurt you," she said softly, almost a whisper. The dog hesitated, its body tense, but it didn't retreat. She remained crouched, patiently waiting. The cold stones beneath her feet began to cause discomfort, but she didn't move. Finally, the animal took a step, then another, until it was close enough for her to drape the towel over it. It didn't resist. It was too thin, and that squeezed her heart. Carefully rising, she led the dog into the house. For the first time in months, the silence in the house didn't feel so suffocating. She filled the bathtub with warm water, and the room filled with steam. At first, he resisted, but soon gave in, as if understanding that it was necessary. As she washed away the dirt and grime, she discovered many scars on the dog's body, silent stories from its unknown past. "What happened to you?" she asked, though she knew there would be no answer. When she finished, she wrapped him in another clean towel and carried him to the living room. She laid an old blanket on the floor, and the dog, with a deep sigh, lay down on it, as if finally finding peace. She sat on the sofa, watching him. For the first time in a long while, she felt something shifting inside her. That night, with the dog sleeping beside her, the house felt more complete. There was a quiet warmth, a presence that brought relief. Closing her eyes, she felt something new beginning. But she also understood that it wouldn't happen without difficulties. Who was this dog, really? Was it a simple coincidence, or would he bring answers to questions she hadn't even suspected? That night marked the beginning of a new routine that, though unexpected, began to fill the emptiness in her life. Charlie, as she decided to name him, quickly became a permanent resident of her home. Every morning, she woke to the sound of his paws pattering on the wooden floor, a sound that, somehow, brought comfort. He seemed to breathe life into a place that had once felt so barren. What would happen next in this story? Would she find answers to her questions? And what secrets did Charlie's past hold? The days of her existence underwent a remarkable metamorphosis. For the first time in a long while, a smile bloomed on her face, brought on by the simplest things. Charlie's clumsy attempts to quench his thirst, his carefree dashes across the garden at the sight of an insect. These fleeting moments seemed to fill her daily life with vibrant colors. She felt the gentle sunbeams warm her skin, and the world around her seemed to come alive in his presence. There was a buzz of activity all around, people hurrying about their business, children at play, couples lounging on the grass, and elderly people kindly feeding birds. For the first time in a long while, she felt a poignant sense of belonging to this world. Sitting on a wooden bench in the park, she watched the surroundings with interest. Her gaze was drawn to a young couple engrossed in taking selfies with their restless Labrador, who clearly refused to cooperate. This touching scene brought back memories of Diego. For a moment, she closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the lingering ache of loss that still haunted her. "You're very lucky to have him with you, you know that," a voice next to her said. Opening her eyes, she saw a middle-aged woman, smiling kindly at Charlie. "He looks very devoted." "Yes," she replied with a restrained smile, "he came into my life at the most unexpected moment." As if reading her thoughts, the woman added, "Sometimes they choose us, not the other way around." These words echoed in her head on the way home. Did Charlie choose her himself, she wondered. This thought was both comforting and intriguing. After all, what made this dog appear at her doorstep that day? In the evening, as she bustled in the kitchen, Charlie stayed by her side, and she felt a strange sense of protection, as if he knew something she was yet to understand. After dinner, she settled on the floor beside him, gently running her fingers through his clean, soft fur. As she stroked him, she remembered Diego doing the same with her. He always emphasized that small gestures of affection meant more than loud words. But now, with Charlie, she felt a different connection, one that required no explanation or justification. One night, while reaching for a blanket to cover Charlie, she stumbled upon a box, lost deep within the closet. Inside lay old family photographs. One, in particular, caught her eye, her grandfather standing in front of the house she now lived in, and next to him, a dog. She picked up the photo and brought it closer to her eyes. Her heart pounded. "It's impossible," she mumbled, disbelieving what she saw. Charlie approached curiously and rested his head on her lap. She stroked his ear, trying to comprehend what she had seen. The resemblance was too striking to ignore. In the following days, she began her own investigation. She questioned elderly neighbors about the history of the house and the dog captured in the photograph. She managed to learn that her grandfather was known for his inseparable canine companion. But the most surprising thing was that, according to the stories, the dog had mysteriously disappeared shortly before her grandfather's death. The more she learned, the stronger her conviction became that Charlie's appearance in her life was no accident. He seemed to carry something more, a story yet to be told, a connection that transcended time. Watching him sleep peacefully next to the sofa, she felt a serenity she hadn't experienced in a long time. But what did this connection between Charlie and her family's past mean? Was he just a dog, or a link to something greater that she didn't yet understand? The discovery of the photograph awakened something new in her mind, as if an invisible puzzle had begun to take shape. Her grandfather's face and the dog's presence in the photo seemed to convey a story she didn't know, but was determined to unravel. Charlie remained the same, but now his eyes seemed to hold even more secrets than ever before. She decided to continue her search for clues. One afternoon, while Charlie was peacefully sleeping on the living room rug, she went up to the attic, a place she hadn't visited in years. Dust danced in the air as she opened forgotten boxes. Each item she pulled out was like a window into the past, old diaries, yellowed with time, and in one of the boxes, she found a hardcover notebook. On the first page was her grandfather's name. "Perhaps this is what I'm looking for," she mumbled, feeling her heart quicken. She carefully flipped through the pages. The entries were disorganized, but they contained fragments of her grandfather's life, personal reflections, details of his daily routine, and frequent mentions of a dog named Nero. It was clear that Nero was very important to him. On one page, she found an entry that particularly caught her attention. "Nero has always been by my side, as if he could sense events beforehand. There is something special about him, something I cannot explain. They say animals feel what we humans cannot understand, and I believe it." Reading this, she felt goosebumps on her skin. These words seemed to mirror her own feelings for Charlie. But what exactly made Nero, and now Charlie, so special? Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more to it? Determined to find out, she took the notebook to the living room and began reading it aloud, sitting next to Charlie. As she turned the pages, he watched her intently with his piercing eyes. At times, she felt that animals were capable of holding memories or experiences inaccessible to human understanding. On that memorable night, something extraordinary happened. The protagonist, busy preparing dinner in her cozy kitchen, suddenly heard Charlie's fierce growl coming from the living room. The sound was low but resolute, completely unlike a pet's usual whine. Concerned, she rushed into the room and saw the dog staring intently at the front door, ready to defend his home from uninvited guests. "Charlie, what happened?" she asked, but the dog didn't take his eyes off the door. Opening the door, she saw only the night's darkness, but an uneasy premonition lingered. Charlie remained vigilant all night, restlessly pacing the house, as if expecting something. His behavior evoked mixed feelings in her, worry and curiosity. In the following days, she noticed that at certain moments, Charlie showed particular alertness, as if he sensed something. This reminded her of her grandfather's words, recorded in his old notebook, "He knows everything in advance." What was Charlie trying to tell her? Was some danger approaching? One day, returning from work, she saw Charlie standing in the driveway. As soon as she got out of the car, the dog headed towards the park, periodically looking back to make sure she was following him. In the park, he led her to a bench where a stranger sat, the same man Charlie had growled at a week ago. This time, the man stood up and approached her. "You have an amazing dog," he said, but I couldn't understand it. Trying to start a conversation, he asked, "Do you live nearby?" Charlie stood between them, as if protecting his owner. His behavior intrigued her and caused slight confusion. Who was this stranger, and why was Charlie reacting to him like that? That same night, she decided to delve into something she hadn't considered before, the history of Nero and the dog's possible connection to her past. In local newspapers, she found mentions of her grandfather. It turned out he was known for his active community involvement, especially during crisis periods. But the most interesting was the mention of Nero, a dog who had saved a child from an accident in the park. "So, you were always special," she whispered to Charlie, who lay beside her as she read. But what did that mean now? Was Charlie some kind of guardian, returned to fulfill an important mission? These questions haunted her as she tried to piece together the scattered fragments of the puzzle. What if Charlie was not only there to protect her, but also to reveal something that could change her life forever? The thought that Charlie might be more than just a loyal friend lingered. There was something about him that made her wonder, where did coincidence end and something deeper, almost supernatural, begin? In the morning, as she brewed coffee, she noticed Charlie's keen eyes following her every move, as if the dog was trying to tell her something. He seemed to want her to understand something, still hidden from her comprehension. She decided she could no longer ignore these signs. Throughout the day, she mentally compiled a list of places and people who might shed light on this mystery. Eduardo came to mind, a retired veterinarian known for his deep knowledge of animal behavior and interest in unusual local stories. She picked up the phone and, after a brief conversation, arranged a meeting. Arriving at Eduardo's humble home, she was greeted with a warm smile. He led her to a room filled with books about animals, and Charlie seemed to recognize the place. "So, this is the famous Charlie," Eduardo said, crouching down to get a closer look at the dog. There's something special in his eyes, an extraordinary depth. As Eduardo examined Charlie, she shared everything she had learned, about her grandfather's notebook, the old photographs, and Charlie's unusual reactions in certain situations. Eduardo listened carefully, occasionally asking questions. "Do you know that dogs have an incredible olfactory memory? They can recognize places and people by scent even after many years. Perhaps he's reacting to something or someone he's encountered in the past." This explanation seemed logical but insufficient to explain all the strange coincidences. Eduardo suggested visiting the park where Charlie had shown the most agitation. Perhaps the key to the mystery lay there. That same evening, while sorting through old documents she intended to take to the park, she discovered another letter, lost between the pages of her grandfather's notebook. The letter was addressed to a certain Miguel, and in it, her grandfather wrote about Nero. "Miguel, there's something wrong with Nero. He seems to sense danger even before it happens. Today he barked again for no apparent reason, at something I cannot explain." The mention of Miguel was completely new to her. Who was he, and why did her grandfather trust him so much? She decided she had to find this person or someone who knew about him. Carefully preserving the letter, she felt she was getting closer to discovering something important. The next day at the park, Eduardo watched Charlie with interest. The dog sniffed every corner of the place. Finally, in front of a large tree, his paws sank slightly into the ground, and he began to dig with unprecedented persistence. "What did you find, Charlie?" she asked, crouching beside him. Beneath a layer of loose earth lay an old, rust-tinged metal box. With Eduardo's help, she managed to open it, revealing an astonishing array of artifacts, a medal darkened by time, an antique portrait of her grandfather with his loyal dog Nero, and a mysterious key. This key seemed meant for something important, but its specific purpose remained a secret. Eduardo carefully examined the medal. "This is a mark of honor," he said. "Your grandfather must have earned it for bravery. But why was it buried here?" In the portrait, her grandfather appeared young, proudly displaying the medal. On the back of the photograph, next to Nero, was an inscription, "To Nero, my loyal guardian." These words deeply touched her, as if unveiling an unsolved mystery. Eduardo suggested that the key might be connected to the old family home, a place she had avoided since her parents' tragic death. Overcoming her fear, she decided to go there. Upon arriving at the abandoned house, she was overcome by a mixture of melancholy and anxious anticipation. Faithful Charlie seemed to share her feelings. The key fit perfectly into the lock of an old chest in the back room. Inside, she discovered letters, yellowed photographs, and an unfinished manuscript, apparently a book her grandfather had been working on. The first pages told of events involving Nero and how the dog had repeatedly saved the family from harm. But what most captured her attention was the mention of a mysterious person her grandfather called the One Who Watches. According to the notes, this person seemed connected to a series of strange events in the city and appeared whenever something important was about to happen. "That's the man from the park," she whispered. Charlie quietly growled, as if confirming her suspicions. Who was the One Who Watches, and what was the connection between him, Nero, Charlie, and her family? She was about to learn that the past held secrets capable of changing her perception of her own history. The answer seemed closer than ever. But the closer she got to the truth, the clearer it became that uncovering the secrets of the past came at a price. Charlie, with his perceptive gaze and protective instinct, was more than just a dog. He was a guardian of a history woven with loyalty, courage, and unsolved mysteries. In the morning, she decided to confront her doubts. She called Eduardo and shared her findings, the letters, photographs, and the manuscript mentioning the One Who Watches. Eduardo suggested looking for additional information in the city's historical archives. Together, they went to the local library, where they spent long hours poring over old newspaper clippings and forgotten records. Among the yellowed pages of a 1960s newspaper, they discovered an article mentioning her grandfather and Nero. The report described a fire at an old factory where Nero had helped save several lives. But a phrase at the end of the article caught their attention. Witnesses reported the presence of a mysterious man who observed the events from afar and disappeared before anyone could speak to him. "This man is everywhere," Eduardo said, frowning. "Are you sure you only saw him once?" The memory of the man in the park and the strange feeling she had experienced upon meeting him resurfaced. She realized she had to learn more about him. Returning home, she began to study every detail in her grandfather's manuscript. The descriptions of the one who watches suggested he was not just an ordinary person. He seemed to appear whenever something significant was about to happen, like a guardian or an observer of fate. As she read, she felt Charlie's support, lying beside her. She smiled, feeling a comforting warmth in this whirlwind of uncertainty. "You always know what to do, don't you?" she asked, stroking his head. It was then that she decided to return to the park, but this time with a clear purpose, to find the mysterious man. Taking Charlie with her, she headed to the place where it all began. The tension in the air was almost palpable, but she was determined. She sat on the same bench where the man had been before and waited. After several hours, he appeared. Dressed in a dark coat, he looked both ordinary and captivating. Charlie immediately became alert but did not growl. He seemed to understand that the decisive moment had arrived. "Do you have questions?" the man said before she could speak. "Who are you? Why were you following my grandfather? And why are you following me now?" The man smiled slightly but gave no direct answer. "Your grandfather was an extraordinary man, as are those destined to protect something greater than themselves. And Charlie chose you." These words made her hold her breath. Before she could ask another question, the man placed a small wooden box in her hands. Inside lay a medallion with the image of a wolf and an engraved inscription, "Protect what matters." "What does this mean?" she asked. The man merely pointed to Charlie. The dog looked at her, as if to say that everything was all right. They returned home in silence, with the box in her hands and even more questions than answers. Over the next few days, she pondered everything she had learned, her grandfather's legacy, Charlie's role, and the mission she was meant to fulfill. She began to write her own story, connecting all the fragments into a narrative that honored the past and linked the future.